Well, I guess one I haven't talked about yet. His name is William Herman, and this is takes place back in 1980s, and he's a contactee. He's been having these contacts with gray aliens. Actually, Wendell Stevens worked on his case and actually wrote two books on his case. And I have actually some of his pictures William took. I guess his first encounter, he said he was on the railroad tracks and he had his camera on him. He was just happened to take pictures of sceneries and stuff like that. And he notices metallic object in the sky zigzagging towards him. He's like, whoa, that's kind of amazing. So he's trying to catch photographs of this thing. And I have photographs. You can see how some of it's blurred and some of them are very clean shots of this thing just kind of going helter skelter in the sky. He said it came so close to him where he like jumped back. Like he jumped. He thought this thing was going to come right at him. Right when it did, this UFO, he tripped over the railroad tracks and he didn't hit the ground. He just noticed there was like a light right when he was falling that he noticed that the ground was right below him and he slowly was rising up into the ship. The last thing he noticed, he was on the table with this kind of like glass thing over him, and he noticed these gray aliens or whatever. And I guess after a while, these ETs were reassuring him that he was safe. They weren't here to harm him. They were just there to test on him, and enough where he got to like actually walk around in the ship with one of them, and he was explaining, answering questions, and he was like brought William to one of these screens. He's like, watch this. So he sees that they're looking from outside the UFO, and this UFO goes up to this car with two people in it, and then these two people jump out of the car and like looking at it with like, whoa, what the hell is that? And then actually the UFO even got closer to him and it freaked the people out. And then the alien's like, yeah, we kind of like to fuck with people. It's kind of like admitted that it's like he's like, well, you guys are kind of assholes. Like just like to fuck around with people. It was really an odd case. The fact that he was describing that this ET was kind of showing him they like to mess with people, and they have their own agendas. So
They have their own agenda. That's true, but that does not. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying
mhm.
that's a whole different angle than whatever I've been
Yeah,
studying
no,
for a while.
that's what I'm saying. That's just a
That doesn't
unique
line up, is what I'm saying.
story, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
How about you, Daniel?
So you're asking for the most scary thing that I have in mind, right?
Just something that doesn't have to scare you, but just kind of gives you goosebumps.
One happened to a friend, and it's more like a paranormal story, I would say. And the other one is a guy that got abducted, and he's from the States, but I don't remember where, because I didn't do anything with the story, because back then it was somewhat unbelievable to me. It was so strange that I didn't believe it, to be honest. Let's start with this one. So, long story short, he told me he was abducted by aliens, and he described them as grays. So they were, yeah, big heads, almond eyes, gray skin, thin, large ones, small ones. When he was abducted from his bed, he woke up in this craft, and the small ones tried to pull him towards a door. He just saw the bright light behind the door, and they tried to pull him with a little bit of force. They tried to pull him inside the door, towards the door. But he was leaning against and fought a little bit because he didn't want to go in there, because he said he had pictures in his mind. Somehow suddenly he saw
Yeah.
pictures. He saw pictures of him laying on something like a table, silver table, and he had pictures in his mind where they were cutting open his legs and his arms and his chest,
Oh shit.
and ripping parts of the skin off. In those, yeah, call it little movies in his head, he was alive. He was conscious when it happened, and he saw himself lying there screaming. Yeah, and they cut off fingers, parts of the finger, and the toes, and ears, and that's why he was scared to get inside the door. And suddenly he said he woke up back in his bed, as if it was a dream. but he said it really happened. And sounded very strange to me and very scary. But back then I didn't believe him.
My favorite story of all time is Bob Lazar's, and just his whole upbringing, man. You got this weird, very weird guy. He's got a pirate flag on top of his house. He likes hookers. The guy's a brilliant genius that put a jet engine on his Honda, and
Man.
just a weird dude. And they put him in the Los Alamos newspaper, and he's at an event one night, and the guy from the government is there making a speech. And then afterward, Bob was just kind of wanting to introduce himself, and the guy's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm actually the guy you're reading about in the newspaper there." You're okay. And then they met. And I think at that moment that guy who wasn't deeply involved in UFOs and stuff and reverse engineering propulsion systems saw this man, saw the brilliance, but also saw that he was not normal, like easily discredited. Like he's got the pirate, he's weird, he's not the captain of the football team. And I think he looked at him and said, this is our guy. This is someone that we can use, but if we ever need to, we can discredit him easily. So he got the job, brought him out. Day one was like doing paperwork. Day two is like, I'm going to show you where you work. And then they bring him to where the mountain, covered in rocks and sand opens up, and he's got 9 saucers in there. And this is the one you'll be working on. And he's not sure about it. He looks at it and he's questioning, but then all of a sudden he sees an American flag sticker on the UFO, and then all of a sudden his face kind of relaxes a little bit and he goes, "Oh, it's us," and he's like, "Everybody's been talking about these flying saucers. Oh, I feel so stupid. It's us." And then he goes, "Oh man." Now this is the chilling part. He wants to go up and touch it. So he does. He goes, "Oh," and he puts his hand on it, and the guy who was his escort says, "Don't touch it." Yelled at him and scared the shit out of him, and from there, that was like, okay, he was reprimanded. And then when he got another opportunity to actually go inside the craft, he was very limited with this craft. But he got an opportunity to go inside it, and you got these people that were saying, "Oh, I bet you that must have been awesome." And then he's like, "No, it was the opposite of awesome." He gets it was a very, very ominous feeling that you got, because you're walking inside something it's not of this world, it's not made by humans. He goes, there wasn't a single edge in this entire craft. It was as though it had been 3D molded from wax. It was all curved, and there's no bathroom, there's no kitchen, there's not even a windshield. It was just 3 chairs, the amplifier and the gravity amplifiers below that, and that's it. And then he goes, I was only able to tell one thing about this whole craft and how it worked, and that's a hatch that I found. It looked like a honeycomb, and I learned how to open it. That's the only thing I was able to learn. But his story was very fascinating because he claims to have had Majestic clearance, and he has his name tag, the name tag we've all seen. It says Majestic clearance, Robert Lazar. Nobody really knew what that meant, Majestic. But then in history, if you go back to Truman started this whole thing of after the crash of Roswell, and he called it, we're going to bring in 12 people commanding 12 different systems, and we're going to call it the Majestic 12. Okay. And you get propulsion, you get brakes, you get protection, you get this, and nobody gets to talk to each other. It's completely compartmentalized. Which is, Bob was always saying, I hate that they do this, because they could get a lot more done if they actually gave us the elements of every other thing. But when Truman was in there, he had a lot to worry about because of Red Scare and Russians. And he's like, man, we got to keep this secret, even from ourselves. But when it came time for FDR was the type of guy where he was like well, you guys put me on a need to know basis, otherwise I'll put it in your hands, you know. But when Truman created the Majestic 12, it think connect the dots, you know. Robert Lazar had Majestic clearance, Majestic 12, you know. It's a connect the dots sort of thing, and it really lines up. And but after that, somewhere along the line after FDR, there's a book about it, like about Roswell and the case of Roswell. Apparently, it just came down to two guys that only had the know-how, only two guys. And the one guy said to his other guy, and he goes, "No one's home, Phil." The guy's like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "It's just you and me, bud. No one's home," because no one else knew about it. It was gone. It like just like that. It was like the Templar treasure, you know. It's there was only like a few corporations in that time, and one of them still exists today, and that's Lockheed Martin. And I think it's run by private industry, man. And Lockheed Martin is definitely a huge suspect, as well as Skunk Works, EE&G, or EG&G. And then there's a new one, a brand new one. It's only a couple years old, and Reynolds Technologies or something like that. But they are now again studying the same stuff, and no one's allowed in. No one can talk about it.
Yeah.
It's completely secret, above top secret.
Yeah, interesting. I heard about this one. Yeah, that's very interesting.
But the chilling part of my story, my favorite part, is when Bob was reprimanded and, you know, don't touch it, you know, and at that point he was like, what am I dealing with here?
Yeah.